The new album, Unity in Time, is upon us, or near enough. What was different about recording a second album compared to recording your debut?
Shall I go first on this, Lee?
Yeah, there's probably two sides of this. So yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah. So when we did the first album, the band was in a very different place. We slightly different lineup, and we sort of had one guy who is no longer with the band, who like sort of wrote everything, and it was sort of everyone does those bits. So it's very much come in, do what was written, and then we actually put all the music together, and then it wasn't until a year later we actually did the vocals. So it was a completely musically written and recorded album. That wasn't the intention, it's just how it played out. And then later we added vocals, which Luke, I'm sure, will add his opinion on. Whereas this time, it was much more collaborative in the sense that we went into the studio with room to still improve the songs and make them better, and collaborate with Justin Hill, who fantastic producer, as opposed to a bit more robust with what we were doing. And the music itself lent itself to that too. The first album, I don't know if you've heard it, but it's much more technical than the newer album. So the songs were sort of constructed in a way there wasn't necessarily a lot of wiggle room in the studio, and it just didn't lend itself to that. Whereas this was much more about, let's craft these songs a bit after they've been written, as opposed to just it's this way because that's the only way we could practically ever have done it.
Yeah.
The vocals were more interesting.
they were a bit, yeah. So from my perspective, then, so when I joined the band in that year period between all of the sort of the music being recorded and the vocals being recorded. So it was quite a challenge. So it was the previous vocalist had stepped away, and sort of the guys were looking for someone sort of fill that space. Miles, who is currently the other vocalist with me, had recorded the drums on the album. So I know these guys from school, and a lot of the Huw and Maz. So we had conversations and went, are you interested? I think they'd seen me at a late night karaoke. That classic audition technique that metal bands use. Yeah. So I was coming into it and essentially given this is the entire album. We've written everything. We just need you to put vocals on top of it. I'd never written vocals before. I'd never really recorded sort of a full album in the studio before. And essentially we had maybe a couple of months to sort of write and record everything, so it sort of would line up with the original sort of release schedule that we'd planned at the time. Mm-hmm. So going from that to now, obviously Huw mentioned working with Justin. I think that's a massive change. So previously we'd used a sort of a different producer on the original album. And I think just the differences there, obviously Justin ex-Sixth, very much in that metal space, has recorded certainly clean vocals of his own for years, and it was a lot more collaborative. I was thinking sort of this afternoon, thinking about the album around Mirrors, the track Mirrors that's on the new album, and that's like the 7-minute track that's on there. Yeah, the Mirrors that we walked into the studio with was not the Mirrors that we walked out of the studio with. Obviously, the writing process we can go into more, but essentially me, Huw and Miles will sort of sit in his garage with the music and go through vocals and sort of workshop that together, and then take those demos into the studio. Mm-hmm. And essentially we then trust Justin to put his flavour on it and give us a bit of guidance, certainly around the vocals, because obviously that's an area that he really excels in. Yeah. So yeah, it was night and day, the two processes.
Very interesting, very good. And like I mentioned, the album's called Unity in Time. Where does the title for this record come from?
So I think it's a theme that runs throughout the album. So there's probably a deeper question around sort of themes within sort of the lyrics and the various different tracks. But I think the overarching idea of what we were trying to convey with the album was an idea of unity. A lot of there are sort of different tracks that touch on different sort of areas, but one of the common themes is being unified and sort of speaking together and coming together. Certainly when we wrote it 2 years ago, our initial plan was to release this in 2020. We recorded it January 2020, fully intending to release it March, April, May sort of time.
Yeah,
that obviously didn't quite pan out. But when we look back, obviously all the things that have happened in the world since then, all of these sort of the songs and the lyrics and the thoughts behind it are all still so relevant today. Even today, we are releasing an album on the day after Putin has taken troops into the Ukraine.
Yeah,
it's incredible what's gone on, and I think you can find yourself when you go down a more political route with your lyrics and with your messaging. You can find yourself pigeonholed, and you can sort of find yourself in a space in time.
Yeah,
I think it can be difficult, and it can date you, I think. But looking back from 2 years ago, the message of unity is still so important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I always find that's the best kind of political or social lyrics, is ones that are vague enough that they can be applied to any situation, and it's not like the world is running out of situations to apply it to.
No, certainly.
Unfortunately not. We'll retire if it sorts itself out to that level.
As well as releasing the album itself, you've done 2 music videos so far. I don't know if there's any more coming, or if by the time I post this, there's a new one out, which happens quite a lot. These are for Voices and Mind Eater. Why were these tracks chosen to represent the album?
I think Voices was all throughout the studio process. I think it felt like this was the song. I think on the whole, obviously everyone disagrees a little bit on things, but on the whole, everyone felt like this was a track that really encompassed sort of all of the elements of the band quite nicely, while still remaining quite a good song to be a single. Like if we took I feel like Mirrors is probably a quite good song as well, representing sort of all the different aspects of what the band does, but it's not a single. And we can't afford to do a music video for it because it would have to be twice as long as a normal one. So that was certainly how we came up with Voices. It just felt right. Voices felt right. This would be the main single. And Mind Eater was a bit not more of a challenge. I'd always felt so I remember when we were recording the original demo of the vocals for Mind Eater, and it's freezing cold in the garage. Luke did this like very high, really catchy vocal line for Mind Eater, and I was like, okay, it's quite a bouncy riff. That's quite a cool chorus melody. This feels like it might be the single. Voices sort of overtook it at a later date, but it sort of it still had that vibe. But there was some discussion about some of the other tracks as well, being the other sort of main video we've done. We have done a couple of other videos too, but they were sort of less primarily pitched, as it were. Whereas Mind Eater and Voices were the main two. We had a sneaky one a couple of days ago for Our Only Home, which was quite cool too. But yeah, I think, is there anything you can remember, Luke, on why specifically you came with those? It's just
it becomes so difficult when I know, having sat in a room with the other 4 of you guys, to try and figure this out, and I'm sure it's just the same thing that all bands come across. You have a couple of problems, but what it often boils down to is you as five different people all have your own different opinion on sort of what's the strongest song, which catches you the most. And you also have to accept that you're only 5 opinions in that room. You're picking songs that are the single on the album, as that being sort of the spearhead for your album into the mainstream. And you also have to think, well, it doesn't just have to be what we think is the strongest song. It has to be what we think other people will think will be the strongest song. But I think Mind Eater and Voices were two quite different tracks. Certainly in sort of the early days of recording, I think they brought something a bit different between them. But they both showcase quite well the underlying themes of the album. So they worked quite well as sort of a showcase for the different areas that we're going to touch on within the wider piece.
Something I noticed while watching the videos, I don't know if it's just me being ignorant or whatever, but I was looking at the each musician in the band, and I thought, no bassist in there. Am I just ignorant, or is there actually no bassist?
There is no. Well, I guess technically, as far as recorded and live music, it's me, but we don't actually have it played live.
Okay.
So when we went through the member change, it was like 7 years ago now. We sort of adding someone into a sort of a group of people who already get on very well and have a great dynamic is always often a challenge.
Yeah.
And we sort of decided that we quite liked it without trying to introduce, not that we couldn't find someone who'd be fantastic, who'd get on with us and fit in amazingly, but we just felt there's already 4 of us on stage walking around on top of then Josh behind. It was always a right hassle in the 6 of us. So what we do is we just run the bass track through our backing track live. We try and do something clever with it so that we get stage noise for it as well as just coming out the PA. So if sometimes it's smaller venues, when you do that with the bass and just in the PA, it gets a bit lost, particularly for the people like in front of the stage.
Yeah.
So essentially the bass parts I write with the guitars and record them.
Okay.
When we do the guitars. Yeah.
I've noticed quite a few bands kind of doing that now. There's quite a few groups or duos or whatever with no bassists.
Yeah, I've noticed it a bit. Kind of feel bad for the bassists.
Yeah,
you don't see it very often with guitars, right? You never see a bassist on stage with the guitar coming through the backing track.
No. I mean, the only band I can think of that used 2 basses and no guitars was Necromantia, the Greek black metal band.
Right. Yeah.
But one of those was an 8-string bass, so they were using that.
So they get the yeah. Yeah, I guess they do their thing with that in terms of it's a slightly different vibe. Do you know if they use guitars as well through the PA when
they did on the last album.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Bassists need to start a little revolution, start having more bass-only bands with the guitar through the PA.
Well, at the moment, bassists are like South Park. It's just, they took our jobs.
Well, exactly, yeah. That's why I'm worried. Where are they? They're probably somewhere really angry.
Well, we've mentioned the videos there. Something else very eye-catching is the album artwork. What can you tell me about the artwork? Who is the artist behind this?
I'm going to pass to you, Huw, because I'm completely blanking. It's really embarrassing.
Okay, no worries. So the artwork was done by his graphic design name is Make North.
Okay.
And the guy's name's Daniel. And we came across him because essentially we saw other bands' artwork and liked it. And like this guy's got cool artwork.
Yeah.
Does anyone know him? And we spoke to Rachel, who's our manager, and she got in touch, and it was great. So I think it was our Home artwork he did, and the Defences artwork we saw, and this guy's, and then we looked at the rest of his stuff, like, okay, cool, it's a good guy. And when we got the artwork back, we were completely blown away with the amount of thought he'd put into it. Not only did he go, because we try and be quite vague with the people we work with, because we want them to bring their thing. We don't want to just say, "Oh, paint this for us," and they'll do a good job. But we'd much rather get as much as we can out of their creative input. So we basically sent them all the lyrics and said, "These are the themes of the album: the sort of the unity, the time, connection, and general challenges the world's facing." And obviously, he came up with the image that you've seen, and also like an essay on all of the themes and meanings to it. Which I don't want to butcher in trying to repeat, but essentially there is we're going to have to do something, some kind of commemorative print or something which has the text that he put. But everything has a reason for being there. So it's a modern design of hourglass to sort of encompass the sort of modern feeling of the music and everything. Yeah. The cracks in the hourglass are to represent the sort of the fractured nature of things, but also like the mental challenges. Then down to the flower in the middle is an iris, which we didn't know this, but that's the flower that represents hope. So yeah, so much going on, and we were you give an artist a couple of breathes. Yeah. I was gonna say, you give an artist a breathe, and obviously you expect them to do something good, but we didn't expect it to be that in depth, which is, it sort of really goes with the themes, because obviously quite a lot of our lyrics are quite in depth, and that's really Miles's round, that everything is thoroughly constructed and thought out. We don't sort of just, he doesn't just sort of write something down and be like, that'll do. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because like you say, he's packed so much into that artwork, but it's not overcrowded or anything like that. It'd be very easy to just busy that up. And he's done such a good job with that. And it's funny because I was talking with Envisions the other day, and he's just done their album art as well.
Yeah. Oh, did he?
Yeah. And
we are following each other around. Same PR, same distribution.
Yeah. But they're totally different. I had no idea that, like, I wouldn't have looked at Unity and Time's artwork and gone, oh, that's the same guy as Envisions. Yeah. Hence why I asked.
No.
It was a really enjoyable process, actually, because previously we'd used sort of one designer to do a lot of our artwork, like from the debut album and some of sort of the following EPs. But I think we all sort of, so he doesn't do album artwork anymore, which sort of pointed us down the direction of we probably need to find a new route. But I think we also wanted to take the opportunity to sort of re-establish what our brand was a little bit, and we as a band have changed quite a lot in the last 10 years since we released Dry Lung Rhetoric. Obviously, Hugh's alluded to, change in members. Obviously, core sort of writing members have stepped away. And what we've become now is a very different beast to what we were. And I think we wanted artwork that would reflect that. And he absolutely smashed it. I love the piece that he's done with this, and also a lot of the merch designs he does.
Oh, okay.
Let's say the merch that's themed off the album artwork we love as well.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Bollocks, I forgot what I was going to say. Fucking notes are worthless. Well, just to wrap things up then, obviously the album is out. It's out today. Obviously, when this goes up, it won't be album release day. But so what's the plans moving forward now? Are you looking at live dates, or is this still very difficult to book because obviously so many tours have been postponed and venues are still pretty much booked up?
Yeah, but both of those things are true. We are definitely looking at dates. We're so on our website, schematatheory.com, we have sort of gig dates that we've got booked in currently. So we're taking some time, sort of middle to back end of March, to do a bit of a tour. Hugh's sort of done a lot of the logistics around getting gigs in, so he can probably tell you how difficult it's been during this process. I know from various conversations we've had that there's been a lot of irons in a lot of fires, and some of them have come to gigs, and hopefully those gigs will actually go ahead when we get to the time in March as well. But yeah, that's all our main focus at the minute. So fully sort of back in the recordings, back in the practice studio, doing all of that. Huw mentioned earlier around Mind Eater and sort of doing demos in his garage in the freezing cold, and the vocal line that I wrote that I now have to make sure I can nail on live, which is always an interesting experience, going from perfect conditions in the studio to doing it in on a rainy night in Stoke. Not as easy, but
on a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
A Tuesday or a Wednesday, either one's fine. But massively looking forward to it. So so I took some time out back end of last year because me and my wife had a little kid.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
So the guys did a bit of touring without me, which I think they quite enjoyed, but it probably brought its own challenges. Not only mainly for Huw, who had to take a good chunk of my vocal parts whilst I wasn't there. But because of that, really excited to get back out there. And obviously, well, certainly for me, I haven't played a gig since 2019, probably the last November 2019. So really
that must have been the last.
Yeah, massively looking forward to getting back out there and just seeing people's reaction to this stuff live. It's really cool to see it. I've been sat on sort of half an hour on my phone all day trying to work as well, and looking at all the stuff on Instagram, people sharing the album and all of that sort of stuff. But which is awesome, and it's incredible to have that after sort of 2 years waiting with the product for it to get out there. But I absolutely can't wait to get back in front of people and see that live reaction, that sort of live interaction.
Brilliant. It's very strong material, so I can't see it going down poorly. So you're pretty
very much.
Well, lads, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me this evening. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.